Next speaker is Councillor Ledman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much. Is Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Okay. You have a photo there, do you?
Yes, I do.
And what's the date of that photo?
The photo is dated 1950. However, the structure you see in the photo was built in 1908, I believe.
Okay. And what do you know what the population was in the city of Ottawa at the time?
I'm not aware of that. I'm sure I could look it up.
Okay. And I guess based on that, in terms of how many people actually had cars and how big an area we're drawing from?
I can't comment on how many people had cars in 1950, although I would suggest that the population in 2007, as well as the amount of people with cars in 2007, when the FIFA Under-20 World Championships were here, is about the same as it is now.
Okay.
And those are where the quotes that you heard, the quotes that suggested that it was very well accommodated, that's when those quotes came from, 2007.
Thank you. And in 2007, there was the FIFA event?
Yes.
Yes. And what other sports activities were happening in 2007?
Off the top of my head, I'm not aware.
Okay. Because these are, all very important elements, too, in terms of, how we cherry pick things, too. I think that these are all relevant elements. No one's discounting the value of football. So if football was suggested at another location, or somebody came forward with another stadium to revive football, how would you feel about that?
Well, first off, I would disagree with the assertion that football is not being discounted at the site. There's been plenty said that football is not welcome at the site. Maybe not from yourself, maybe not from other members of council, but it's definitely been part of the, especially amongst the delegations.
But
however,
I mean, as a city, as a city.
As a city, I mean, if you're asking me, would I go to football at any stadium in Ottawa?
Yes.
The answer is yes. I'm not I'm not attached to a stadium. But if you're asking me if I think we should throw away the heritage of professional sports at Lansdowne Park, the answer is no. I don't believe we should. And be clear, I'm saying professional sports. I've seen some mock-ups, very poorly costed, very rough, that have some soccer fields and things like that. And that's great. I mean, as a fan of sports, I'm all for amateur sports, and I think it's a great thing that we should have in our city. But the heritage of Lansdowne is professional sports, among other things. And I'm not for a second suggesting that the farmers market shouldn't be a part of it, and that the Aberdeen Pavilion shouldn't be a part of it, and that some commercial space shouldn't be a part of it. I absolutely think commercial space is vital to livening up any asset. And I think that is, now I'm not going to speak to how much square footage and et cetera. I'm not going to speak to that. I think that that's something that can be worked out, and I would leave that to council to work out those numbers. But I would definitely, the suggestion that any retail at Lansdowne is bad, I don't accept that. And I think there's been some fair comment today suggesting that most reasonable people, including the BIA, suggest that there is room for some retail, and I appreciate that. But the numbers I won't get into. But Lansdowne, if you're willing to throw away the history that you don't agree with, where does that stop? Why, had the OSCG group come forward and said, we want to build a stadium, but we want to tear down everything else, people would be outraged, because they would say that's the heritage of the site. And I would agree with them. I would be here with them saying that is an outrage. That's not what's being proposed. Both heritage buildings on the site are not only being kept, they're being improved to the point where people will actually use them.
Okay. I'm not sure if you were here, but there was another picture that showed Lansdowne and all the green space that existed around it when it was first developed, and basically how it was cannibalized because of the requirement for parking grew and grew and grew. So, certainly the stadium has had a lot of evolutions and a lot of uses. It was military staging grounds. There was a lot of history that it certainly is behind this. But at the same time, we also have to bring it into the reality of the situation today in terms of transportation network, in terms of value of retail.
Councillor, we're really not trying to do debate.
In terms of those things, have you taken that in consideration when you're viewing this from that perspective? And it's to say, well, you did state, well, the stadium's there, live with it type of thing. But at the same time, we want to build a stadium where people want to go to and want to be at, and where people want to live too. If we're going to create an environment that is unhealthy for that, what's your perception?
I agree with you 100%. And the problem that I see in this debate is that it's becoming far too polarized based on facts that I'm just not seeing.
Okay.
You're saying that there's a history of green space. I believe we had a international design competition for a giant chunk of green space. You know how much green space is at Lansdowne right now? 0, except for the artificial turf field.
No, I understand that, and also that they're also talking about using it for parking. But all in all, I mean, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming forward, and the photograph that you brought is very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We still have some questioners here. I think we have Councillor Cullen.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It certainly was very lively. I take it you must be very disappointed that the Senators moved out to Kanata instead of playing at the Cattle Castle.
You know, I can see you're being trying to be funny, but to be quite honest, you know, I live in Kanata, and when I moved in, I did not call Councillor Wilkinson and say, I don't like the traffic. Can you please move Scotiabank Place? If someone told me that they were going to build a brand new arena at Lansdowne or at Bayview, I'm assuming your
Don't make assumptions. Just respond to the question. It's easier to deal with.
Then, yeah, I would love to go to that arena. I would love to go to that arena. Absolutely.
Well, I just asked about your disappointment, but one of the reasons why they went there was because they could provide the 9,000 parking spaces that they would be obligated to do. At this particular site, our city policies would ordinarily require 10,000 parking spaces. So there is an issue here of trying to accommodate. I agree with you that there is a heritage in the city for sports of different kinds, but there's also, as my colleague said, the practicality of enabling this to work. So, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. The final questioner is Councillor Manette.
Thank you very much for coming today, and thank you for finding those facts. It was quite interesting, actually. Were you at the Grey Cup in 2004 in Ottawa?
Unfortunately, I was not.
No, okay. I was, and I guess this has got to be a question, so I can't go that route. Were you aware that there was no issues with traffic with the Grey Cup in 2004?
I've read that. Once again, doing some research, I looked into it, and from all accounts in the media, traffic went quite well during the Grey Cup. Of course, there were special accommodations made, which I would assume council would be looking into, shuttle buses and things like that. I think the issue here is that I don't debate the fact that there are concerns. And I think those concerns are legitimate. I'm not trying to dismiss anyone's concerns. But I think the important thing to do for the growth of the city is to find a way to address those concerns and make it work, rather than saying that this is some sort of secret sweetheart deal that we're trying to undermine democracy or something along those lines. Let's just make it work. I'm not suggesting that anyone is wrong to state that there might be a need for some more parking. I'm not saying that anyone's wrong to state that there might be a need to cut down the retail component a little bit. But I'm also going to say unequivocally, there should be a stadium at Lansdowne. Absolutely. And in fact, there is a stadium at Lansdowne currently.